Okay, so in the first two videos we got the legs working, and now we're going to add some motion to the body to make that look a little bit more interesting. So we start, as always, with the COG control, that's the center of gravity, and I'm going to hit S there, and then middle mouse drag that to 17 and hit S again. So now we've got the body, a keyframe set at 1 and 17, and what we want is for the body to go down a little at frame 5, and then up again at frame 9, and then down at frame 13, and then up at 17. So we get a little up and down motion on the body like that. Now let's just take a look at that curve that we've created. I'm going to hit A in the graph editor, and that's our curve. And what we want to do now is turn on infinity curves, because you have to turn them on for each curve in turn. And now you can see one of the really useful things that infinity curves does is it shows us how this curve is connecting in infinity. And we can see here that this isn't a particularly attractive connection. That's not a nice curve. So what we want to do is select all of these 3 points, and I'm just going to go to the flatten tangents button there, which will flatten that curve out and make it smoother, because we want a nice sine curve. And we also want the up and down to be more or less the same. So we want 5 and 13 to be in almost around about the same position. I'm going to flatten that, make sure that's flattened off, and 1, 9 and 17, because we don't want any limp on this scorpion. We just want it to move up and down in a normal kind of way. Now, of course, if you want to get accurate playback, we'd actually have to go to frame 16, because otherwise 1 and 17 are playing the first position is effectively playing twice, but it's okay. 1 to 17 is fine. Anyway, that seems to be working all right. So now that we've got that going, we need to start adding a bit more flexibility in the body. Now, if I select the head control, we actually have a button for that up there. Oh, I'm using the wrong shelf tab. Scorpion is what I want, and it looks like I haven't named something, so let's go to shelf editor, and that should be called head. Save all shelves. Great. So yes, so we do have a little button there for the head, and what I think we want to happen is for the head to oppose the motion of the body. So as the body goes down, the head should go up, and vice versa. So I'm going to set a keyframe. I'm just going to have the head go slightly down at frame 1, set a key there, middle mouse drag that to frame 17, middle mouse drag that to frame 9 as well, and then at frame 5 I'm just going to adjust that head up a bit, and I'm holding down the shift key as I'm rotating this curve so that I only get a rotation on the X rotation. I don't get any keys set on any other rotations. And then at frame 13 we want to do the same, lift it up. Now hit A in the graph editor, and let's have a look at that curve. As before, we've got to turn on the infinity curves, curves pre-infinity cycle, curves post-infinity cycle, and just as before we're going to have to select these keys up here and flatten off those tangents so that we get a nice swooping continuous curve. And I'm just going to adjust that just so that it's more continuous. Now that sort of works. That's giving us a bit more flexibility, but I think the problem with it is it's too closely in sync with the motion of the body. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this curve and I'm going to advance it 2 frames. So whoops, not that way, to the right, 1, 2. I'm holding then the shift key and the middle mouse key. And now let's see, okay, that's slightly nicer, but I think the overall motion is too big. So I'm actually going to, whoops, just reduce this curve slightly. Let's reduce that to 16, see what that looks like. Okay, not too bad. It's giving us some extra flexibility. I think it's still too much. So I'm going to reduce it a little bit more. We don't want it to be distracting. The idea is just to give flexibility, not to have it draw attention to itself. Okay, so we've got the claws working, and now we should also actually let's go back to my menu, which is in the project brief. So offset the curves on the tail, offset the front pincers, one down opposing the body. Yeah, we could do a little animation on the pincers, that would be nice. So why don't we have, well actually, why don't we have the whole head rotate so that as that leg comes forward, we could, let's do it on frame 9, we could have the head rotate in Y slightly towards the foot. There we go. And then on the opposite, we could have it rotate against that foot. So what we end up with on the rotate, oh yes, and then we've got to have to middle mouse drag that to 17 so that it, else we're going to get some dodgy curves here. Whoops, I didn't go to 17, I went to 16. So why it's so important to look at the graph editor. So wait a minute, back to frame 1. We just rotated the head over towards that pincer because it's near this claw, this leg that's coming forward. So we set a key there. Let's now middle mouse drag that to 17 so they're both the same. Okay. Now we're getting some strange keys here. The problem is that we've already we've already shifted some of those keys around, so it's starting to get a little bit confusing. But I think we're fine. I'm going to delete the keys at frame 19, and I'm going to flatten those tangents off, and I'm actually going to delete the keys at 3 and delete the key at 11. And now we're getting a nice smooth curve. That's what we want. We want that head rotating back and forward. There we go. So it's now moving up and down, but also from left to right. So we're getting a nice sense of flexibility there. I might just tone down that action slightly so it's a little bit less extreme. We want it to be about the same on either side of the axis. Okay, so that's starting to feel decent. And we should probably also, although it's actually a little tiny bit stiff because these claws feel like they're terribly rigid. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this because I like where I've got to. And you always want to save when you like where you've got to, because you never know when you might mess things up. And then you can't remember how to get back to the last good version that you have. So saving in Maya is not just about preventing crashes or having something to rescue you from Maya crashes. It's also about having good versions of your work saved regularly. Okay, so in the next video we'll add more overlapping action and flexibility.